Welcome to Inside the Philippines. I'm your host, and today's story is one that's going to stick with you. This is Colm, 63 years old, an Irish carpenter from Cork, who spent 4 decades working with his hands, building kitchens, fitting wardrobes, honest trade work. After losing his wife to cancer, and then inheriting money from his brother's sudden death, Colm came to the Philippines looking for purpose, for warmth, for something to fill the emptiness. He met a woman and her family at Sunday Mass in Cebu. They welcomed him. He saw their living conditions and thought he could help, thought he could build them something that mattered. What happened next changed everything. This is a story about generosity without protection, about the gap between good intentions and legal reality, about building on someone else's foundation and discovering too late what that actually means. Here's his story, in his own words. My name's Colm. I'm from Cork, and I've been a carpenter for 40 years. Not the fancy kind who builds bespoke furniture for wealthy clients, the honest kind. Kitchens for young couples starting out, wardrobes for growing families, repairs on old houses where the wood's gone soft with damp. Measure twice, cut once. That was my life. Simple, decent work. Then Mary got sick. It started with a cough she couldn't shake. By the time they found the cancer, it had spread. 3 years we fought it. 3 years of chemo appointments, hospital visits, watching the woman I'd loved since I was 23 fade away piece by piece. I kept working between treatments because the bills never stopped coming. Ireland's health care is better than some places, but it's not free, and the extras add up quick. Special drugs, private consultations, things the public system won't cover when you're desperate and time's running out. She died in February. The house we'd shared for 38 years felt like a tomb after that. Her teacup still on the draining board, her cardigan on the back of the chair. I'd walk through the rooms and the silence would press on me like a physical weight. I paid off what medical debts I could, but I was left with bills I couldn't clear, and hands that didn't know what to build anymore. 6 months later, my brother Sean dropped dead. Heart attack at 58. 1 minute he's watching the match. The next, he's gone. The solicitor rang me a week after the funeral. Sean had left me everything. He'd never married, never had kids, and I was his only sibling. The total came to €120,000. More money than I'd ever seen in my life. Blood money. Money I never wanted, but desperately needed. I paid off Mary's remaining medical bills first, cleared my own debts. That left me with €120,000 sitting in the bank and absolutely no idea what to do with it. I was 62 years old, living alone in a house full of ghosts, taking whatever carpentry work came my way, but finding it harder to climb ladders, harder to stay on my knees, fitting skirting boards. A mate from the local, Declan, had retired to Thailand a few years back. Every time he'd visit Cork, he'd tell me the same thing. Get out of here, Colm. Get out of the rain. Go somewhere warm. Start over. He meant well, but Thailand felt wrong to me. Too party-focused, too seedy. I'd seen the documentaries, that wasn't what I was after. But the idea stuck. Going somewhere warm. Somewhere I could afford on what I had. Somewhere I could breathe again. YouTube kept recommending me videos about the Philippines, simple living channels, expats showing their cheap monthly costs, tours of beaches and countryside. What caught my attention, though, was that it's a Catholic country, 85% Catholic. That mattered to me. Mary had been devout, Mass every Sunday, rosary beads by the bed. The faith had been her comfort through the worst of it. A Catholic country felt like a connection to her somehow, like I wouldn't be completely untethered. In January, Numb and desperate, and not thinking too clearly, I booked a month-long trip to Cebu. I wasn't looking for romance. I wasn't looking to invest in property or start a business. I just needed to be somewhere that wasn't Cork, somewhere that wasn't full of memories I couldn't escape, somewhere warm where I might remember how to breathe. I had no idea what I was walking into. I landed in Cebu on a Tuesday afternoon in late January. The heat hit me like opening an oven door. 32 degrees, the humidity so thick you could taste it. I'd brought a jacket in my carry-on because Ireland in January is 6 degrees and pissing rain, and I stood there outside the airport in jeans and a button-down shirt, absolutely melting, while jeepneys and taxis honked and diesel fumes choked the air. I'd booked a basic hotel near the city center through Booking.com. Nothing fancy, just somewhere clean with air conditioning. The taxi ride was chaos. Motorbikes weaving through traffic, jeepneys painted in mad colors, stopping wherever they pleased, street vendors selling God knows what from carts on the roadside. Everyone was shouting, music blaring from shops. The driver had the radio on full volume, playing some Filipino love song I couldn't understand. It was overwhelming, completely overwhelming, and I loved it because it wasn't Cork. The first week I just wandered. I'd wake up late, eat breakfast at Jollibee because I recognized the logo and didn't have to guess what I was ordering, then walk until the heat drove me back to the hotel. I ate alone, walked alone, sat in air-conditioned malls watching Filipino families shop and laugh and live their lives. I felt more alone than I had in Ireland, which I hadn't thought was possible. On my second Sunday, I went looking for a Catholic church. I'm not particularly devout myself, but Mary had been, and I thought maybe going to Mass would make me feel closer to her. Less adrift. The hotel staff directed me to a small church in a town about 40 minutes outside Cebu City. I took a jeepney there, squeezed in with about 15 other people on benches made for 10, the driver playing the radio at volume that would get you arrested back home. The church was simple. White painted concrete, red tile roof, cross above the door. Nothing like the old stone churches in Ireland, but the rhythm of the Mass was familiar, even though it was in Tagalog and Cebuano. I didn't understand the words, but I knew when to stand, when to sit, when to kneel. Muscle memory from decades of Sunday Masses with Mary. That's where I met Maricel. I was fumbling with the hymnal, trying to follow along phonetically with words I couldn't pronounce, when I noticed her smiling at me from the pew ahead. She was 42, I'd learn later, though she could have passed for younger. Simple floral dress, no makeup, tired eyes, not flashy. Not the kind of woman you'd see in the bar girl stories. Just a regular woman at Sunday Mass. After the service, she approached me outside. Her English was hesitant, but clear. "You are new here? First time in our church?" I told her I was Irish, visiting for a month, just looking for somewhere to pray. She smiled and said her family attended this church every Sunday. Would I like to join them for coffee? There was a small carinderia nearby, a kind of local eatery, she explained. I said yes, because I hadn't had a proper conversation with anyone in a week. We sat at a plastic table under a tin roof, drinking instant coffee that was far too sweet, and she told me about her life. She worked as a municipal health worker at the Barangay Health Center. Basically, a community health aide, doing home visits, tracking vaccinations, helping with basic medical needs in the area. She had 2 teenage kids, a boy and a girl, from a previous relationship. The father wasn't around. She didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask. What struck me was that she didn't ask the usual questions. Not where I was staying, not what I did for work, not why I was in the Philippines. She just talked about her job, her kids, The challenges of getting her son to take his studies seriously. Normal things. Real things. We met again the following Tuesday. She'd sent me a message on Facebook. We'd exchanged details after coffee, asking if I'd like to join her family for dinner. Nothing fancy, she said, just home cooking. I showed up at the address she'd given me, a small concrete house in a residential barangay, and met everyone. Her father, Mang Rolando, was a retired jeepney driver, maybe 70, with hands as rough as mine and a laugh that came easy. Her mother, Aling Luz, sold vegetables at the public market. She kept trying to feed me more even after I was full, the way mothers do everywhere. Her brother Jun worked construction. There were nieces and nephews running around, neighbors stopping by, the kind of chaotic family warmth I hadn't experienced since Mary got sick, and our world shrank to hospital appointments and hushed conversations. They served adobo and rice, lumpia that Aling Luz had made that afternoon, San Miguel beer that was ice-cold and perfect in the heat. No one asked me for anything. No one mentioned money. They just included me, teased me gently about my pale Irish skin, asked about Ireland, and seemed genuinely interested in the answers. Over the next 2 weeks, I saw Maricel and her family regularly. Simple things. Meals together. Walks around the town. Another Sunday Mass. She showed me around the area. The market where her mother worked. The health center where she spent her days. The school her kids attended. I met more extended family. Everyone was warm, welcoming, curious about the Irish Kano who'd wandered into their church. I kept waiting for the ask, for someone to mention needing money or suggest an investment opportunity. I'd watched enough YouTube videos about Philippine scams to be wary, but it never came. They just seemed to enjoy having me around. 3 weeks into my trip, Mang Rolando invited me to see where he and Aling Luz actually lived. The concrete house where we'd been having dinners belonged to Maricel's cousin. Mang Rolando and Aling Luz lived on family land about 20 minutes away, in a traditional nipa hut. We took a tricycle out to the barangay. The land was beautiful. Coconut palms, banana trees, the green of the Visayan countryside. But the house made my chest tighten. It was falling apart. Bamboo walls split with age and weather. Corrugated tin roof so rusted I could see daylight through the holes. Dirt floor in the main room. Rough wooden planks in the sleeping areas. The heat inside was suffocating. No ventilation, no relief. One room for everything. Cooking, sleeping, living. Maybe 4 meters by 5 meters total. I stood there looking at it with a carpenter's eye, and I could see exactly what it would take to build something proper. Not fancy, just solid. 3 rooms, proper foundation, decent roof, concrete floors, real windows. A kitchen that wasn't just a single burner on a wooden table. Mang Rolando must have seen something in my face because he said, almost apologetically, "We have been saving for many years to build a proper house, but always something comes up. Medical bills, school fees for the grandchildren. Someday, God willing, we will have enough." He said it without expectation, without pressure, just a simple statement of fact. This was his reality, and he'd made peace with it. But I hadn't. I flew back to Cork in mid-February with my head full of images I couldn't shake. That rotting bamboo, that rusted roof, Aling Luz cooking over a single burner, Mang Rolando sleeping on wooden planks at 70 years old, and I had €120,000 sitting in the bank. Sean's money, Mary's medical debt money, blood money that felt like a weight every time I thought about it. For the first time since Mary died, my hands itched to build something. Something that mattered. Something that would give that cursed inheritance meaning instead of guilt. I told myself I was being smart, being careful, not rushing into anything. But I already knew what I was going to do. I was going to build them a house. Back in Cork, the house felt worse than before. I'd left in January to escape the ghosts, and I'd come back in February with new ones haunting me. Every room reminded me of Mary, but now the first also couldn't stop seeing that nipa hut, the rotting bamboo, the rusted tin roof. Ailing loose bent over that single burner in the suffocating heat. Ireland in late February is miserable. Cold drizzle, grey skies, darkness by 4:30 in the afternoon. I'd go to the local for a pint, and Declan would be there going on about Thailand's beaches and cheap beer, and I'd nod along, but my head was somewhere else entirely. I stayed in touch with Maricel through Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp. Just simple messages at first. She'd send me photos of her kids, updates about her work at the health center. I'd tell her about carpentry jobs I was doing, the weather in Cork, nothing deep. She never asked for anything, never hinted at needing money. Just friendly messages, the kind you'd send to someone you'd got to know and liked. But I couldn't stop thinking about that house. I'd lie awake at night doing calculations in my head. Materials costs, labor, what it would take to build something solid on that land. I'd spent 40 years as a carpenter. I knew exactly what needed doing. 3 bedrooms, one for Mang Rolando and Aling Luz, one for Maricel and the kids when they visited, one spare. Proper bathroom with a flush toilet and shower, kitchen with a real cooker and sink. Nothing fancy, just decent, livable. In late March, I messaged Mang Rolando directly. Kept it simple. Said I was a carpenter. I had some money from my brother's inheritance. I'd been thinking about their situation. What would it cost to build them a proper house? Nothing fancy. Just solid. He took 2 days to reply. When he did, he said they couldn't accept charity. It was too much. They'd manage somehow. I wrote back immediately, told him it wasn't charity. I needed to do this. The money I had, it was from my brother who'd died too young, from medical bills for a wife I'd watched suffer for 3 years. The money felt cursed. Building something good with it, something that would help people who'd shown me kindness when I was lost. That would give it meaning. Honor Sean's memory. Make Mary proud, maybe. He didn't reply for another day. Then, let me ask my son-in-law. He is contractor. He can give estimate. That's how I met Ernesto, at least over WhatsApp. He was married to Maricel's younger sister. He'd been doing construction work around Cebu for 15 years. Knew the local suppliers, the permit process, how things worked in the barangay. He sent me a detailed breakdown. The land was already there. Family land, titled in Mang Rolando's name, passed down from his father. No cost for that. What we needed was permits from the barangay, land surveying to mark the exact building site, materials, labor. His estimate came to 800,000 pesos. I did the conversion, roughly 15,000 euro. I'd researched this, you understand. I knew foreigners can't own land in the Philippines. It's written into the Constitution. But this felt different. I wasn't buying property. I wasn't trying to own anything. I was building a house for people who'd welcomed me, on land that was already theirs. It was a gift, not an investment. Looking back now, I can see how naive that sounds, but at the time, it made perfect sense. I went to the bank in Cork and wired 15,000 euro through Western Union. Ernesto confirmed receipt within hours. He sent me photos. The barangay captain signing the building permit, the surveyor marking the plot with wooden stakes, the first delivery of hollow blocks and sand. That money left my account, and I felt lighter. Like I'd finally done something right with Sean's inheritance instead of just letting it sit there reproaching me. I spent my evenings in Cork drawing proper building plans. 3 bedrooms like I'd imagined. The master bedroom would be 4 meters by 4 meters. Enough space for a proper bed and wardrobes. The other 2 bedrooms smaller, 3 by 3. Bathroom with septic system. Kitchen with concrete counters and a stove. Living area. All single-story, simple construction, but well-built. The kind of house that would last. I sent the plans to Ernesto via WhatsApp. He said they looked good, very professional. He'd start work as soon as the permits cleared, probably late April. Maricel messaged me separately. Said her father cried when he saw the building permit. Said he'd prayed for this for 20 years, and God had sent an angel from Ireland. I told her not to be daft. I was no angel, just a carpenter with money he didn't earn who wanted to build something good. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good. Being needed, being useful, having a purpose again. I booked a return flight to Cebu for early June. Gave myself 2 months to finish up carpentry work in Cork. Sort out my affairs. The plan was to spend 4 months in the Philippines overseeing construction. Make sure it was done right. I wasn't about to send all that money and just hope for the best. I'm a tradesman. I needed to see the work myself. Ernesto sent me photos every week. Foundation trenches dug, rebar laid, first concrete pour. The work looked good from what I could see, though photos only tell you so much. In May, Maricel's son's school fees came due. She mentioned it casually in a message. Said the boy had to drop out of the computer course he'd been taking because they couldn't afford the extra 2,000 pesos a month. I did the math. €32. I sent it without thinking. Told her to keep the boy in school. She sent me 3 messages thanking me. Said I was too generous. They didn't deserve this kindness. I told her to stop. It was nothing. Just happy to help. Looking back now, that was the first step. €32 doesn't sound like much. But it established the pattern, didn't it? I was the foreigner with money. They were the struggling family. When they needed something, I could help. I didn't see it that way at the time. I just saw a smart kid who needed a chance at a better education. By the time I landed in Cebu in early June, Ernesto had sent me photos of the house already halfway up. Walls were standing, roof frame going on. It looked further along than I'd expected in just 6 weeks. I took a taxi from the airport straight to the barangay, excited to see the progress in person. What I found stopped me cold. The house was wrong. Completely wrong. The dimensions were off. The walls were where I'd drawn the kitchen. The bedroom layouts didn't match my plans at all. The construction was cheap hollow blocks instead of the solid cement blocks I'd specified. There was no proper footer foundation, just shallow trenches with rebar sitting directly in the soil. Ernesto was there supervising 3 workers. When he saw me, he smiled wide and said, "Boss Colm, welcome back. Looking good, yes?" I asked him what happened to my plans. Why was everything different? He laughed, not unkindly. "Filipino style, boss. We adjusted for local conditions. Your design was too expensive, too complicated. This way is better, cheaper, faster." I felt my chest tighten. This wasn't what I'd drawn. This wasn't what I'd paid for. But what was I going to do? Tear it down? Abandon a house that was already halfway built? Walk away from €15,000 already spent? I swallowed my anger, told myself maybe he was right. Maybe I was being too rigid, too Western in my thinking. This was the Philippines. Things were done differently here. I should trust the local expertise. That was my second mistake. The first was sending money without proper oversight. The second was not walking away when I saw the work was wrong. I moved into a boarding house near the barangay that night. Basic room, shared bathroom down the hall, 250 pesos a night, about €4. I'd stay there for the next 4 months, overseeing construction daily. And that's when the real money started flowing. The thing about construction work in the Philippines is that everything costs more than the estimate. Every single thing. Ernesto had told me the hollow blocks were cheaper than solid cement. But 3 days after I arrived, he came to me saying we needed to upgrade because the cheaper blocks were absorbing too much moisture. The upgrade? 500,000 pesos. €8,000. I looked at the half-built walls and thought about structural integrity. Thought about Mang Rolando and Ailing Luz living in this house for the rest of their lives. Thought about what would happen during typhoon season if the walls weren't solid. I paid. Then it was the roofing. Ernesto had used thin GI sheets, galvanized iron, cheap stuff that would rust through in 5 years. I could see the gauge was wrong, see where corners had been cut. Proper roofing materials, the kind that would last, cost another 750,000 pesos, €12,000. I paid again. The plumbing was a disaster. PVC pipes so thin you could crush them with your hand. Joints that leaked during the first test. I spent an afternoon with the plumber redoing the entire system myself while Ernesto watched. New pipes, proper fittings, actual waterproofing for the bathroom. 375,000 pesos. €6,000. Then electrical. The wiring they'd run was undersized for the load. The junction boxes weren't weatherproof. The main panel was second-hand with rust on the connections. I'm not an electrician, but I know dangerous work when I see it. I brought in a proper electrician from Cebu City. Cost me another 300,000 pesos, €5,000. But at least I could sleep, knowing the house wouldn't burn down. By mid-July, I'd spent €45,000 total. 30,000 more than the original estimate, and the house still wasn't finished. But something else was happening. The family had fully adopted me. Every morning, I'd walk from my boarding house to the construction site, and Mang Rolando would be there with coffee. Instant Nescafe in a plastic chair under a coconut tree. We'd sit and talk about the work, about Ireland, about his years driving a jeepney through Cebu's mad traffic. He had a way of laughing at everything, finding humor in the chaos. Aling Luz started bringing me lunch daily, packed in a metal tiffin carrier, rice, adobo, sometimes sinigang, or lechon kawali if she'd splurged at the market. She'd never let me pay for it. "You are doing so much for us, Kuya. This is nothing." Kuya. Big brother. They'd started calling me that in late June. Not just Mang Rolando and Aling Luz, but everyone. The construction workers, the neighbors who'd stop by to watch the progress, the kids running around the property. Kuya Colm. It made me feel like I belonged to something again. Maricel's kids started coming around more. Her son Miguel was 17, bright kid, always asking questions about Ireland, about construction techniques, about everything. Her daughter Anna was 15, quieter, but she'd help her grandmother bring lunch and stay to watch me work. They called me Tito, uncle. I'd never had children of my own. Mary and the first had tried for years, but it never happened. Having these kids treat me like family, like I mattered, it filled something I didn't know was still empty. I started working alongside the crew daily. My carpentry skills impressed them. The way I could hang a door perfectly plumb, fit window frames with no gaps, build cabinets that actually closed properly. The head carpenter, a guy named Rodel, started asking my advice on everything. "Boss Colm, what you think? This way or that way?" I wasn't just paying for the house anymore. I was building it myself. My hands knew what to do again. For the first time since Mary died, the first woke up with a purpose. There was work to be done, people depending on me, something real taking shape under my hands. Mang Rolando introduced me around the barangay as family from Ireland who is building us a house. Not the foreigner who's paying for it, but family. I'd get invited to birthday parties, to barangay fiestas, to Sunday lunches after Mass. Everyone knew Kuya Colm. I told myself this was what community felt like, what belonging felt like. Not the isolated existence I'd been living in Cork, but real integration into something bigger. Looking back now, I can see I was buying that belonging. But at the time, it felt genuine. By August, new problems emerged. The septic system failed during installation. The tank they'd put in was too small. The drain field wasn't properly graded. The whole thing needed to be ripped out and redone. Another 250,000 pesos, 4,000 euro. Then we needed a water pump for the well. The barangay water system was unreliable, Ernesto explained. Better to have their own deep well with an electric pump. 125,000 pesos, 2,000 euro. The finishing materials, tiles, paint, fixtures, all cost more than budgeted. Inflation, boss, Ernesto kept saying. Everything going up in price. Another 500,000 pesos, 8,000 euro. Every time I'd think we were nearly done, something else would come up. And every time, I'd pay. Because what was my alternative? Stop now and leave them with an unfinished house? All that money already spent for nothing? That's called the sunk cost fallacy. And I was drowning in it. By September, the house was nearing completion. 3 bedrooms with tiled floors. Proper bathroom with a flush toilet. Shower with hot water. Sink with a mirror. Kitchen with concrete counters. A gas stove. Cabinets I'd built myself. Living room with a ceiling fan and windows that actually opened and closed smoothly. It was modest by Western standards, but compared to that nipa hut, it was a palace. I'd spent 60,000 euro, half my inheritance, and the house still needed interior paint, a gate for the property, gravel for the driveway, curtains, furniture. But I had 60,000 euro left, plenty to finish the work, and still have something to live on. I wasn't worried about money yet. I should have been. One evening in late September, I was having dinner with the family at Maricel's cousin's house. The usual crowd, maybe 15 people, kids running around, karaoke playing from a neighbor's house. Mang Rolando stood up and made a speech. He said God had blessed their family by sending me. That for 20 years he'd prayed for a way to give his wife and children a proper home. And his prayers had been answered. That I wasn't just a friend. I was family. Blood might not make family, he said, but love does. And they loved me. Everyone cheered. Aling Luz was crying. Maricel hugged me. The kids called out, Kuya Colm, Kuya Colm. And everyone raised their San Miguel bottles in a toast. I felt my eyes sting. Felt something in my chest crack open. These people, they saw me. They valued me. I wasn't just the grieving widower drifting through Cork alone anymore. I was Kuya Colm, family from Ireland, the man who built them a house. I'd spent 60,000 euro, but I'd bought something money wasn't supposed to be able to buy. I'd bought belonging, except I hadn't bought it at all. I'd just rented it. And the lease was about to run out. October brought the extras. That's what I call them now. The extras. The little requests that came one after another, each one reasonable on its own, each one adding up to a hemorrhage I couldn't stop. It started with Miguel's school. Maricel came to me in early October, tears in her eyes. The public school was overcrowded, she said. 60 kids in a classroom. Miguel was smart, really smart, but he was falling behind. There was a private school in Cebu City that had a proper computer program, smaller classes, better teachers. It would give him a real chance at university, at a future. The tuition was 150,000 pesos for the year. I did the math. 3,000 euro. She was crying when she asked. Said they'd been saving but couldn't get enough together. Said she hated asking, that I'd already done so much. But Miguel was so bright. He deserved this chance. I looked at this kid who called me Tito, who asked me questions about Ireland and carpentry and the world beyond the barangay. Smart lad. Good lad. What was 3,000 euro to give him a proper education? I paid. 2 weeks later, Aling Luz needed cataract surgery. The public hospital had a waiting list 18 months long. By then, the doctor said, she might lose vision in that eye completely. A private clinic in Cebu City could do it next month. 100,000 pesos. 2,000 euro. She'd been feeding me for months, packing lunch daily, never accepting payment. She called me Kuya and treated me like her own son. How could I let her go blind? I paid. Then the septic system failed again. Different problem this time. The first replacement had been done wrong. Contractor error. Nothing to do with Ernesto. But it needed fixing. Another 180,000 pesos. 3,000 euro. In November, Mang Rolando's cousin had a business opportunity. A sari-sari store, one of those small neighborhood shops that sell everything from rice to mobile phone load. His cousin had found a perfect location near the main road. High foot traffic, guaranteed income. They needed capital to stock it. 100,000 pesos. He'd pay me back double within 6 months. I knew better. I'd watched enough YouTube videos about Philippines business scams, but this was Mang Rolando's cousin, family, and Mang Rolando himself was vouching for it. Said his cousin was honest, hardworking. This was a real opportunity. I lent the money. 1,800 euro. The store opened in mid-November. By January, it was closed. The location wasn't as good as promised. The competition was fiercer. The profit margins too thin. My money was gone. When I asked about repayment, the cousin avoided me. Mang Rolando apologized, said these things happen. Business is risky. I swallowed it, told myself it was a lesson learned. Then there was the generator. The barangay power was unreliable. Brownouts twice a week, sometimes lasting hours. Mang Rolando's cousin knew a guy who could get a generator at family discount. Brand new Honda, 250,000 pesos instead of 300,000. 4,000 euro instead of 5,000. I paid because what's the point of building a house with electricity if there's no power half the time? Each request came with tears, with apologies, with "we hate to ask," and "this is absolutely the last time," and "we'll pay you back somehow." And I kept paying because I'd started to understand something about Filipino culture. They have this concept called utang na loob, debt of gratitude. It's more than just owing someone. It's a deep, almost spiritual obligation to repay kindness shown to you. And the family had shown me kindness when I was at my lowest. They'd welcomed me, fed me, included me, made me feel like I belonged. How could I refuse to help them now? They had so little. I had so much. The money was tainted anyway. Sean's heart attack money, Mary's medical debt money. Better to transform it into something good, something that helped people I cared about. That's what I told myself. That's how I rationalized it. By late November, the house was finished. 3 bedrooms with glossy tile floors, kitchen with running water, a 4-burner gas stove, cabinets I'd built and painted myself, bathroom with a flush toilet, shower with hot water, a proper sink with a mirror, living room with a ceiling fan, and windows that caught the breeze. It was modest, simple, but it was solid, well built. The kind of house that would last. Total spent, €88,000, 73% of my inheritance. I had €32,000 remaining. Still a decent amount. Enough to live on for a while, especially in the Philippines where costs were low. The house blessing ceremony was scheduled for early December. The whole barangay was invited. The day arrived hot and bright. The barangay priest came in his white vestments. Neighbors brought food, pancit, lumpia, rice, fruit. Someone's uncle had roasted a lechon, a whole pig turning crispy and golden over charcoal. The smell filled the air. The priest blessed each room, sprinkling holy water, leading prayers in Tagalog. Mang Rolando and Aling Luz stood in the living room crying. Maricel held her mother's hand. Miguel and Ana stood beside me, both of them grinning. I felt Mary's presence so strongly, it hurt. She would have loved this. The Catholic ritual, the community gathering, the generosity. She'd always said the best use of money was helping others. She would have been proud. After the blessing, everyone ate. The lechon was crispy and perfect. San Miguel flowed freely. Someone set up a karaoke machine and neighbors took turns singing. Kids ran around shrieking and laughing. Mang Rolando made another speech. Thanked God. Thanked me. Said I'd given his family a gift beyond measure. That the house wasn't just wood and concrete, it was love made solid. Everyone cheered. Later, after most people had left, the family showed me my room. The smallest bedroom, about 3 meters by 3 meters. Single bed, small wardrobe, a window looking out over the coconut palms. It was more than enough. Maricel and her kids would take the master bedroom when they stayed over. She still lived in town near her work, but the plan was she'd move out here eventually. Mang Rolando and Aling Luz would stay in the old nipa hut for now, use the new house's kitchen, transition slowly. The 3rd bedroom was spare, for guests, for family who visited. That night, I moved my belongings from the boarding house. 2 bags. Not much to show for 63 years of life. But I didn't need much. I had a home now, a family, a place I belonged. I lay in bed that first night listening to the sounds of the barangay, dogs barking in the distance, a motorbike puttering past, the rustle of palm fronds in the breeze. Through the wall, I could hear Mang Rolando and Aling Luz talking softly in the old nipa hut. For the first time since Mary got sick, the first felt at peace. I'd built something that mattered. I'd turned blood money into something good. I'd found a family that valued me, a place where I belonged. I was Kuya Colm, family from Ireland, the man who built them a house. I fell asleep smiling. I had no idea what was coming. January started well enough. I'd settled into routines. Morning coffee with Mang Rolando under the coconut tree, both of us watching the sunrise. Helping Aling Luz with small maintenance around the house, fixing a squeaky door hinge, adjusting a window that stuck. Sunday Mass with Maricel. Simple, peaceful days. I had €32,000 left. Not a fortune, but decent money. I was being careful now, watching my spending. No more big expenses, just monthly living costs, food, electricity, a bit for Gcash transfers when the family needed something small. Then, in late January, Mang Rolando's cousin came round. Different cousin this time, not the sorry store one. This cousin, Eddie, had been kind to me during construction, always helpful, always smiling. He had an opportunity. A sorry store, but a real one this time. Proper location. Guaranteed foot traffic. He needed 175,000 pesos to stock it. 3,000 euro. He'd pay me back with interest, 20%, within a year. Guaranteed. I should have learned. But Eddie seemed genuine. And Mang Rolando was vouching for him, saying Eddie was the smart one in the family. Good with business. I lent the money. The store opened in February. By March, it had closed. Supply issues, Eddie said. Competition. Bad timing. The money was gone. When I asked about repayment, Eddie stopped coming around. Mang Rolando apologized, said family is complicated, these things happen. I'd just lost another 3,000 euro. Down to 29,000 now. Then, in mid-February, Jun moved in. Maricel's brother. He showed up one evening with 2 bags, said his wife had kicked him out after a fight. Just temporary, he said. A week, maybe 2, until things cooled down. The 3rd bedroom, the spare room, became his. He didn't offer rent, didn't offer to help with utilities or food costs, just moved in like it was his right. I mentioned it to Maricel after a week. She looked hurt. He's family, Kuya. You don't charge family for helping them. This is what families do. I felt like the culturally insensitive foreigner, the rigid Westerner who didn't understand Filipino family values. So I backed down. Let it go. 2 weeks became a month. A month became permanent. John was still there in March, still there in April. His wife wasn't taking him back. He'd found work doing construction in town, but he never offered a peso toward household costs. The electricity bills started climbing. John would leave the aircon running all day in his room. Leave lights on. The monthly bill jumped from 3,000 pesos to 7,000. 130 euro instead of 50. Food costs tripled. I'd been feeding Mang Rolando, Aling Luz, myself. Now it was June, his 2 kids who visited on weekends, Maricel when she came out from town, sometimes her daughter Anna, who'd started spending more time at the house. 8 people, sometimes 10. The weekly food bill went from 2,000 pesos to 6,000. My monthly costs jumped from 400 euro to nearly 1,000. March brought new problems. Maricel decided the living room needed repainting. Didn't ask me, just hired someone to do it. 50,000 pesos. 800 euro. She paid with money I'd given her for household expenses, and came back asking for more. Then new furniture. The cheap plastic chairs we'd been using weren't nice enough, she said. Not appropriate for a proper house. She bought a wooden solace set, sofa, chairs, coffee table. 75,000 pesos. 1,200 euro. Again, she spent money I'd given her for other things, then asked me to replenish it. I tried to object. Said we should discuss these things before spending money. She cried. Said I'd told her this house was for her family, that I'd built it for them. Why was I being controlling now? Didn't I trust her judgment? I backed down again. Gave her more money. But something had shifted. I'd started to notice things. The way Maricel would make decisions without asking me. The way June treated the house like it was his, not mine. The way extended relatives would show up unannounced and stay for days, using electricity, eating food. And I was expected to just accept it, because this is family, Kuya. In late March, Maricel asked me for a monthly allowance. 15,000 pesos, 300 euro. Just to cover household expenses, she said. Water, electricity, food, maintenance. It seemed reasonable until I realized she was also asking for separate money for Miguel's school supplies, for Aling Luz's medicine, for emergency expenses that came up weekly via GCash. I was hemorrhaging money. €1,000 a month in regular costs, plus another 500 in emergencies. €1,800 a month total. At that rate, my remaining 26,000 would last less than 2 years. But I couldn't say no without seeming selfish. Without seeming like I didn't understand that this was Filipino culture, that extended families lived together here, that wealth was meant to be shared. I told myself I was being culturally sensitive, respectful, that Western ideas of individual property and boundaries didn't apply here. Looking back now, I can see I was rationalizing, making excuses, too invested, financially and emotionally, to admit I'd made a mistake. Then came the night of April 3rd. I remember the date because it's burned into my memory. I'd gone to bed early, around 9. The heat and the work were exhausting me. I was 63, and the Philippine sun and humidity took more out of me than they used to. Around 11, I woke needing the bathroom. The house was mostly dark, quiet. I walked down the hallway in my bare feet. That's when I heard voices in the kitchen. Jun and Mang Rolando talking in Cebuano. They didn't know I was awake. I'd picked up enough Cebuano over the months to understand basic conversation, and what I heard made me freeze in the hallway. Jun, kailan mabiya ang kano? When is the kano leaving? Mang Rolando laughed. Dili ko sure, pero dili na magdugay. Not sure, but not much longer. Jun, maayo, grabe ka comfortably na niya diri. Good. He's getting too comfortable here. Mang Rolando. Oo, pero kining balay, ato na kini? Yes. But this house, it's ours now. They were laughing. Not cruel laughter, not mocking. Just matter of fact, like discussing when a contractor would finish a job and pack up his tools. The kano, that's what they called me. Not Kuya Colm, not family. The kano, the foreigner. When is he leaving? The house is ours now. He's getting too comfortable. I stood in that dark hallway, my hand against the wall, feeling the smooth paint I'd applied myself, and something inside me crystallized like ice water. I was never family. I was never Kuya, not really. I was a resource, a walking bank account who'd built them a house and filled it with furniture and paid for school and surgery and generators. And now that the house was built, now that the money was mostly spent, I was in the way. I went back to my room without using the bathroom. Lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Jun and Mang Rolando still talking, still laughing in the kitchen of the house I'd built with my own hands. Everything I'd told myself about family, about belonging, about transforming grief into generosity, it had all been a lie I'd needed to believe. They'd welcomed me because I had money. They'd called me Kuya because I was paying for things. They'd included me because I was useful. And now that I was getting too comfortable, now that I might expect to actually live here permanently, I needed to go. I didn't sleep that night. Just lay there doing the math. €88,000 on the house, 8,000 on extras, 3,000 lost to failed business investments, another 7,000 on monthly bleeding since December, €106,000. Nearly all of Sean's inheritance, nearly all of the money from Mary's medical bills, gone. And I had nothing. No ownership, no legal protection, no home, just a bedroom in a house I'd built on someone else's land, in someone else's name, and they wanted me out. The next morning, I couldn't face Mang Rolando for coffee. I stayed in my room until I heard him leave. Then I walked out to the kitchen where Maricel was making breakfast. I asked her directly, "Does your family expect me to leave?" She stopped what she was doing, looked at me with those tired eyes, and she didn't deny it. She cried instead, said I didn't understand, that her family needed this house more than I did, that I had money, I could go anywhere, rent a nice place in Cebu City, live comfortably. They had nothing. This house was everything to them. I tried to explain. I'd spent my entire inheritance building this house. I'd built it to live here with them, not for them. This was my home too. She looked at me with genuine confusion. But Kuya, you're not really family. You're our friend. A very good friend. But family is blood. There it was. The truth laid bare. I'd called them family. They'd called me Kuya. But we'd been using the same words to mean completely different things. That evening, Jun found me sitting outside looking at the house I'd built. He sat down next to me. Not unkind, just matter of fact. Maybe better you find your own place, boss. This is family land, family house. You did a very good thing for us. We will always be grateful. But now it's time, I protested. Said I'd spent 96,000 euro. Said I had receipts. I'd built this myself. I had rights. Jun shrugged. You gave a gift. Now the gift is given. All the receipts are in Ernesto's business name for tax purposes, remember? The land is in my father's title. Has been for 3 generations. What can you do? He wasn't being cruel. He genuinely didn't understand why I was upset. In his mind, I'd done exactly what I'd said I would. Built them a house. Now that house was theirs. Transaction complete. The next day, I took a taxi to Cebu City and found a lawyer. Filipino guy, mid-40s, office in a building near Ayala Center. I paid him 50,000 pesos, 800 euro, for a consultation. He listened to my story, looked through what documentation I had, then gave me the verdict. The land was titled in Mang Rolando's name. Always had been. Foreigners cannot own land in the Philippines. It's in the Constitution. I knew that, he said. I'd known that going in. All the construction payments had gone through Ernesto's contractor business. For tax efficiency, they'd said. For local permitting. Made sense at the time. But it meant I had no receipts in my own name. No legal claim to the construction costs. The house was a permanent improvement on land I didn't own. Under Philippine law, that house belonged to the landowner. Full stop. Could I fight it? Maybe. I could file a case claiming unjust enrichment, try to get reimbursement for construction costs, but it would take 3 to 5 years in Philippine courts, cost me at least 20,000 euro in legal fees. And I'd probably lose. Did I want to pursue it? I looked at my bank balance on my phone. 24,000 euro remaining. After paying the lawyer, bleeding money monthly for months, supporting a family that wasn't mine. I couldn't afford a legal fight. Even if I could, I didn't have the energy for it. I booked a flight back to Cork for early May. 1 week away. That last week in the house was surreal. The family was polite, even warm. But it was the warmth you show a departing guest, not family. Aling Luz cooked my favorite Filipino dishes, adobo, sinigang, lumpia. Mang Rolando offered me a beer one evening, sat with me looking at the sunset, talking about the old days when we'd worked on the house together. There was no malice, no guilt. They genuinely believed they'd done nothing wrong. I'd given them a gift. The gift was complete. Why was I making it complicated? On May 7th, I left. Maricel drove me to the airport in Cebu. We didn't talk much. At the departure gates, she hugged me, said I'd always be welcome to visit, said they'd never forget what I'd done for them. I didn't say anything, just walked through security and didn't look back. I landed in Cork with 18,000 euro remaining from the 120,000 I'd inherited, and a credit card maxed out at 4,000 euro from final expenses I couldn't cover. The house in Cork felt exactly the same as it had 2 years earlier. Mary's ghost still there. The silence still pressing down. Except now I was 63 instead of 61. My knees ached from months of construction work, and my hands weren't as steady as they used to be. I picked up carpentry work where I could, but the bigger firms don't want older workers. I got the small jobs, repairs, odd work, things younger carpenters didn't want. The money ran out within 8 months. I don't talk about the Philippines. My mates at the pub know I went, know something happened, but Irish politeness means they don't press. Sometimes someone mentions retiring abroad, and I stay quiet. Let them dream. The worst part isn't the money. Though Christ knows that's bad enough, my entire inheritance gone, nothing to show for it, back to scraping by at an age when I should have been comfortable. The worst part is that one genuinely believed I was building something meaningful. That grief could be transformed into generosity, that a family's warmth was real affection, not a calculated investment in a resource that would eventually be depleted. I was a carpenter who forgot the first rule of the trade. Never build on someone else's foundation. Never put your work into something you don't own. I built them a beautiful house, solid construction, good materials, the kind of house that'll last decades. And it's theirs. Completely, legally, permanently theirs. I was never family. I was just the Kano who built them a house. That's my story. That's what happened when an Irish carpenter tried to turn blood money into redemption in the Philippines. Learn from it. Don't be me. Colm's mistake wasn't generosity. Generosity is a beautiful thing. His mistake was generosity without legal protection in a country where foreigners cannot own land. Let's be clear about something important. Filipino family culture isn't a scam. The expectation that wealth should be shared, that foreigners have endless resources, that utang na loob creates permanent obligation. These are genuine cultural values, not manipulation tactics. They're deeply rooted in a society where extended family support is the only social safety net many people have. But when Westerners interpret family warmth as permanent belonging, when they build houses on land they can't legally own, when they assume gift-giving creates the same obligations in the Philippines as it would back home, that's when generosity becomes expensive naivety. The legal reality in the Philippines is stark and non-negotiable. Foreigners can own condominium units, with restrictions. Only 40% of any building can be foreign-owned. But land? Never. It's written into the Constitution. Any property built on land you don't own becomes part of that land, legally owned by whoever holds the title. Colm spent €96,000 building a house on land titled in Mang Rolando's name. Every payment went through Ernesto's contractor business. No receipts in Colm's name, no legal protection, no recourse. Verbal agreements mean nothing. Family promises mean nothing. The law is clear. Did Maricel's family manipulate Colm? Or did they genuinely see him as a generous foreigner, helping people in need? Which is exactly what he said he wanted to be? The answer is probably both, and neither. Cultural expectations are complicated. Poverty creates desperation, and generosity without boundaries looks like an invitation to keep asking. The Philippines will accept everything you're willing to give, and then ask why you've stopped giving. That's not cruelty. It's a fundamentally different understanding of wealth, family, and obligation. Colm spent €96,000 building a house for people who saw him as a generous foreigner, not family. They weren't lying when they called him Kuya, Big Brother. But in Filipino culture, even big brothers eventually go home. Colm just didn't realize he was never meant to stay. If you're considering investing in property in the Philippines, building a house for a partner's family, or making any major financial commitment, get legal advice first. Understand what you're actually getting into. Protect yourself with contracts, proper documentation, and realistic expectations about what family means in different cultures. Hope is beautiful, but contracts are essential. If Colm's story sounds familiar, or if you've had your own Philippines experience you want to share, leave a comment below. We read every one. Thanks for watching Inside the Philippines. Until next time, stay safe out there.